What happens when a veteran journalist finally decides to stop playing nice and instead demands real answers from the Duchess of Sussex, live on national television? This wasn't just an interview, it was a reckoning. And what unfolded on the Today Show left millions stunned. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping showdown between Savannah Guthrie and Meghan Markle, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss our deep dives into the moments that expose the truth behind celebrity headlines. Studio 1A in New York felt different that morning. The lights were bright, the audience was quiet, and every camera operator seemed to sense what was coming. Savannah Guthrie sat at her desk, calm and ready, flipping through her cue cards one last time. She had done hundreds of interviews before, but this one carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. Across the studio, Meghan Markle stepped onto the set. Her team adjusted her jacket, fixed her microphone, and whispered final reminders. She smiled, poised as always, but her eyes moved quickly, scanning the crew. Everyone knew this was not just another celebrity appearance. It felt like a stage for something bigger, something raw and unpredictable. The producers whispered through headsets as the countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked on and the Today Show was live. Savannah greeted the audience with her familiar warmth, but there was a sharpness beneath her tone. She turned to Meghan with a polite smile, one that carried curiosity and quiet challenge. Meghan thanked her for having her, her voice steady but a touch rehearsed. The first few questions were easy. They talked about her new lifestyle brand, her family, and her passion for empowerment. But something in Savannah's expression suggested she was waiting for the right moment to push deeper. There was tension under the surface, even if the audience could not see it yet. Savannah's eyes stayed focused on Meghan, never breaking contact. Meghan, trained in public speaking, answered with confidence, but her smile tightened slightly each time Savannah followed up. It was the kind of silence between words that tells its own story. This was not going to be another soft interview. Viewers at home could already feel that something was shifting. The comments started flooding social media almost instantly. People were typing, "Savannah looks ready to challenge her." Others wrote, "This feels awkward already." The energy in the studio was sharp, almost electric. The conversation moved smoothly for the first few minutes, but you could tell Savannah was leading it somewhere. She had facts in front of her, quotes, and moments that did not align. And when she was ready, she would bring them out one by one. That was her strength. Before we dive into what really happened next, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. What you are about to hear is the truth behind what millions of viewers never saw on air. This was the moment when two very different worlds collided live on television, and neither one walked away the same. After leaving the royal family, Meghan Markle built a new life in California. At first, the world watched with curiosity. She and Prince Harry signed massive media deals, promising to tell their story on their own terms. Their Netflix series broke streaming records. The interviews with Oprah and other major outlets sparked endless debates about truth, privacy, and personal freedom. Meghan's image became a mix of admiration and controversy. To her supporters, she was brave for speaking out. To her critics, she was using pain as a brand. Each appearance seemed carefully planned, every word measured and rehearsed. Meghan had mastered the art of controlling her narrative. Every setting was comfortable, every interviewer sympathetic. It created the sense that she was not being questioned but celebrated. Over time, audiences began to notice the pattern. The same themes appeared again and again, and many wondered when someone would finally ask the hard questions. That is where Savannah Guthrie came in. For years, she had built a reputation for professionalism and integrity. She was respectful but never afraid to press for clarity. Viewers trusted her because she asked what others were thinking but were too polite to say. Behind the scenes, Savannah was known as calm but direct. She had little patience for talking points. When her producers told her she would be interviewing Meghan, she knew what kind of challenge it would be. This was not going to be another sympathy segment. It was not about tearing anyone down, but about breaking through the polished surface and finding something real. Savannah wanted to give Meghan space to speak freely, but also to hold her accountable for the contradictions that had followed her since her royal exit. In recent years, public trust in celebrity interviews has started to fade. Audiences are tired of scripted moments and carefully managed emotions. They want honesty even when it is uncomfortable. They want to see how people react when the questions are not pre-approved. That shift in expectation is what made this interview so powerful. People were not tuning in just to hear Meghan's story again. They were watching to see if someone would finally challenge it. And as the cameras rolled, that question was about to be answered. The interview began with the usual warmth and small talk. Meghan smiled as she spoke about her new lifestyle brand, describing it as a celebration of wellness, balance, and empowerment. She talked about wanting to help women find their voices and create spaces where authenticity could thrive. Her words flowed smoothly, each sentence polished and rehearsed. The audience in the studio nodded politely, and for a moment, it seemed like another positive, predictable morning show conversation. Savannah listened carefully, her hands folded on the table. She smiled, but her eyes stayed locked on Meghan. When Meghan paused to take a sip of water, Savannah leaned forward slightly. Her voice was calm but carried a firmer edge now. She asked, "You have said in the past that you were silenced by the institution, that you were not allowed to speak your truth. But you have given 4 major interviews just this month. Help me understand that." The air in the studio shifted instantly. The audience grew still. The camera operator closest to them hesitated for a moment before zooming in on Meghan's face. The producers in the control room whispered through their headsets. They knew this was the moment that would define the entire segment. Meghan's expression softened, but only for a second. She gave a polite smile, the kind that was meant to reset the mood. She said she believed in sharing her experiences because her voice had been suppressed for so long, and she was finally free to use it. Savannah nodded but did not move on. Her tone stayed even as she replied, "But you have had the freedom to speak for some time now. What exactly were you silenced from saying that you have not already shared?" There was a flicker in Meghan's eyes. Her hands, which had been resting gracefully on her lap, began to fidget slightly. Her voice came out steady but the calmness felt forced. She said that people often misunderstood her intentions, that speaking out was about healing, not publicity. Savannah listened again, but her expression did not change. It was clear that she was not satisfied with the answer. Behind the cameras, one crew member glanced at another. The energy was no longer easy or light. It had turned into something far more gripping. Meghan's smile was still there, but it looked tighter now, almost strained. The pauses between her words grew longer, and the charm that usually carried her through interviews seemed to fade under the weight of Savannah's gaze. In that moment, the balance shifted. Meghan realized that this was not the kind of conversation she could steer with polished talking points. Savannah was not looking for sound bites. She was looking for truth. And as the interview went on, that truth began to push through every carefully chosen word. Savannah leaned slightly forward, her voice steady but more focused now. She shifted the conversation toward the moments that had defined Meghan's public story. "In your past interviews," she began, "you mentioned that royal protocol made you feel isolated, that you were not allowed to express your emotions freely. But some former palace staff have said you often broke that same protocol. How do you reconcile those two experiences?" Meghan took a quiet breath, her posture still perfect, but the calm in her tone started to waver. She said that her actions had been misunderstood, that the rules were not applied evenly, and that she was treated differently because of who she was. The words, "my truth," and "my experience" carried more weight now, as if she was defending something deeply personal. Savannah nodded slowly, not to agree, but to signal that she had heard every word. She waited a beat before responding. "You have also spoken about emotional struggles and the pain of living under constant scrutiny," she said. "But some critics point out that you chose to do multiple public projects during that time. Were you struggling, or were you also seeking visibility?" The question hung in the air. Meghan's face tightened just slightly, and she adjusted her seating before answering. She said that her work gave her purpose, that it was a way to stay strong. Her voice was calm but faster now, as if she was trying to fill the silence. Savannah watched carefully, her expression unchanged. There was a brief pause, then Savannah continued. "You also claimed that members of the royal family made racist remarks. That was a serious accusation. But in a later statement, you said it was not directed at Queen Elizabeth or Prince Philip. People are confused about what the truth really is. Can you clarify what actually happened?" The room felt heavier. Meghan's team shifted behind the cameras. She hesitated, then said that the conversation had been taken out of context, that her intention was never to label the entire family, only to describe how the experience felt to her. She repeated that her truth was based on how she perceived those moments. Savannah's voice stayed even, calm, and professional. "So it is your truth," she said. "But can a truth be personal and still be presented as fact to millions of people?" For a moment, Meghan did not respond. Her smile faded, and her eyes moved to the side, away from the camera. She started to explain again, this time more emotionally, saying that she felt dismissed, that people had judged her story without understanding her pain. The polished composure from earlier had softened. She was no longer delivering prepared lines. She was defending herself. Savannah let her finish, then gently said, "I understand that you felt unheard, But many viewers are asking for clarity, not sympathy. They want to know what really happened, not how it was felt. That is why I am asking. The audience watching from home felt the tension. On social media, clips of the exchange started spreading instantly. Viewers tweeted about Savannah's calm persistence and Meghan's visible discomfort. Some praised Savannah for keeping the conversation honest. Others accused her of being too harsh. Inside the studio, the silence was powerful. Meghan's voice dropped slightly as she said that her truth was still her truth, no matter how it was questioned. Savannah nodded again, this time more slowly, as if she was letting the weight of that statement settle. The cameras caught everything. Meghan's eyes were bright but restless. Savannah remained steady, her posture confident but respectful. This was not anger. It was accountability. And in that moment, the balance of control on set had completely shifted. What started as a friendly interview had turned into a quiet, televised test of truth. The conversation had already grown tense, but what happened next pushed it into a completely new territory. Meghan's tone shifted from control to defensive. Her voice carried more edge now. She looked at Savannah and said that the line of questioning felt like gaslighting. She explained that when women speak their truth and are challenged, they are often told that their experiences are not real. She said that questioning her version of events was another form of silencing. For a brief moment, the studio fell silent. The crew froze behind the cameras, waiting to see how Savannah would respond. The air was heavy with the kind of tension that can only exist when something deeply personal collides with something public. Savannah did not interrupt. She took a slow breath, looked directly at Meghan and said calmly, "Gaslighting means trying to make someone doubt their own reality. That is not what I am doing here. My job is to understand, not to dismiss. I am asking you to explain the parts of your story that do not match the facts that others have shared. That is accountability, not gaslighting." Her words landed with quiet precision. There was no raised voice, no sarcasm, just steady conviction. Meghan blinked, surprised by how composed Savannah remained. The audience could see the contrast between them. Meghan's emotions were raw and visible, her voice rising and falling as she spoke. Savannah stayed calm, her tone steady and analytical. Meghan tried to regain control of the moment. She said that she was tired of being questioned, that the media always tried to twist her words. She repeated that she was only sharing her lived experience. Savannah nodded slightly and replied, "I believe you have every right to share your experience. But when you bring your story to the public, people are also allowed to ask questions. That is how open conversation works." The exchange was sharp, uncomfortable, and deeply revealing. On social media, viewers immediately took sides. Some accused Savannah of being unfair, saying she was too aggressive. Others applauded her for staying professional while Meghan became emotional. Hashtags about the interview started trending within minutes. Clips of that single moment filled timelines, each edited to support a different point of view. Inside the studio, Meghan's smile had faded completely. Her body was tense, her voice quieter but edged with frustration. Savannah's expression never changed. She stayed poised, letting each question hang just long enough to make the silence feel heavier. That moment became the turning point. What had started as a conversation about empowerment had transformed into a confrontation about truth and responsibility. It was no longer just about Meghan's story. It had become a debate over who gets to define reality when emotion and accountability collide on live television. The room had grown quiet again, the earlier tension now replaced by something colder and sharper. Savannah leaned forward slightly, her tone steady but probing. She asked Meghan a question that made even the studio lights feel heavier. "Do you think there is a line between sharing your pain and profiting from it?" The question caught Meghan off guard. Her eyes flickered for a moment as if searching for the right words. She said her story had never been about profit. It had been about survival, about mental health, and about protecting her family. She said that when the world had turned against her, she needed to speak her truth to stay alive, not to make money. Savannah listened carefully but did not soften her expression. She said, "You have every right to share your story. But you did more than tell it. You built a brand around it. Books, podcasts, deals. That is not punishment. That is a platform." Meghan's tone rose, the frustration showing through. She said that people had no idea what it felt like to live under constant judgment. That the pain was real, the isolation unbearable. She said that if her story inspired someone to get help, then it was worth it. Savannah nodded slowly, giving her a moment before replying. Her voice stayed calm, but her words carried weight. "You were not cut off for telling your truth. You left and then you monetized that story. There is a difference." The air shifted. Even through the camera lens, viewers could feel it. Meghan blinked, her confidence faltering for the first time. The truth in Savannah's statement hit harder because it was not cruel. It was clear. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence felt raw, as if both were realizing the emotional cost of everything that had been said. Meghan's expression softened, her voice quieter now. She said she had lost friends, family ties, and privacy. That no amount of success could replace what she had given up. Savannah's tone eased too. She said, maybe that is the price of being seen. Once the story is out there, it belongs to everyone. The tension slowly gave way to reflection. Both women looked tired, their voices lower, their words more deliberate. The conversation had moved past accusation into something more human. It was no longer just about fame or criticism. It was about what happens when personal pain becomes public property. When the need to be understood turns into a brand, and the line between healing and performance starts to disappear. The atmosphere in the studio had changed completely. What started as a tense conversation was now teetering on the edge of collapse. Meghan's composure, once carefully controlled, began to crack. Her eyes flashed with frustration and her voice grew tight. She said she would not continue being attacked on live television. Then she stood up. The audience fell silent. The crew froze behind the cameras. For a moment, it felt like the entire show might fall apart in real time. Meghan adjusted her mic, her hands trembling slightly, and said, I am not going to sit here and be disrespected. Savannah remained seated, her expression calm and steady. She did not raise her voice. Instead, she looked up at Meghan and said quietly, if you walk away now, you prove your critics right. The words hung in the air. Meghan blinked, visibly thrown off. The defiance on her face began to soften. She hesitated, her breathing uneven. The tension in her shoulders loosened as if she was suddenly aware of how it all looked, millions watching, waiting to see if she would stand by her image or face the conversation head-on. She slowly sat back down, her voice quieter now. You have no idea what I have been through, she said. You cannot understand what it feels like to be everyone's target. Savannah's tone stayed measured. You are right. I cannot. But what I can do is ask what the public sees and what you choose to show. That is the conversation. For the first time, Meghan did not answer right away. She looked down, her face a mix of anger and exhaustion. The cameras captured every second, the subtle shake of her hand, the shallow breath she tried to steady. Savannah leaned forward slightly, her voice lower but firm. This is not about tearing you down. It is about asking what integrity means when the story becomes bigger than the truth. The energy in the room felt raw, almost too personal for television. The line between interviewer and subject had vanished. It was not journalism anymore. It was a mirror, one reflecting pain, pride, and the heavy cost of public image. When Meghan finally spoke again, her tone was different. Softer. Almost defeated. I only ever wanted to be understood, she said. Savannah nodded, her expression gentle now. Then stay in the conversation, she replied. The moment lingered, a quiet reminder that truth is never simple and image can only protect someone for so long before it breaks. The studio felt heavier than before. The lights that once flattered Meghan now seemed to expose her. Every breath sounded louder in the silence that followed. Savannah waited, her eyes steady, giving Meghan space to speak. The tension had stretched so far it could snap at any second. Meghan took a slow breath. Her voice was quieter now, stripped of the usual confidence. I thought I could have it all, she said. The platform, the love, the freedom. I thought I could use fame to do good without losing myself in it. She looked down for a moment, almost as if she was speaking more to herself than to Savannah. But I did not understand how heavy it would be. How people would twist everything I said. I thought I could control it. Savannah did not interrupt. She just listened, her expression softening as Meghan's guard began to lower. The energy in the room shifted from confrontation to something fragile. Then Savannah said quietly, that is the first honest thing you have said all morning. The words were not cruel. They were truthful. And they landed with a weight that everyone in the studio could feel. Meghan blinked, her lips parting slightly as if she wanted to respond, but no words came. Her eyes glistened and for the first time she looked small. Not as a duchess or a celebrity, but as a person who had been fighting to keep her image from crumbling. The silence that followed was powerful. The crew did not move. Even the hum of the studio lights seemed to fade. The camera held on Meghan's face, capturing the flicker of realization that this was not about reputation anymore. It was about truth. The narrator's tone softened. For the first time, the Duchess dropped her crown. The performance ended, and what remained was something real, a glimpse of the person behind the headlines, the one who had been chasing perfection in a world built to tear it apart. Meghan straightened her posture, taking a deep breath as if trying to rebuild the walls that had just fallen. Her voice steadied, though her eyes still carried the weight of what had been said. "I am just being authentic," she declared. "People may not understand my choices, but I am living my truth. I refuse to apologize for that." Savannah nodded slightly, her expression unreadable. She waited a moment before replying, letting Meghan's words hang in the air. Then she said calmly, "Authenticity is powerful, but there is a difference between being honest and being indulgent. Sometimes we mistake victimhood for virtue, and that can make us blind to our own privilege." The room froze. It was not a shout or a confrontation. It was the kind of quiet truth that cuts deeper because it is spoken softly. Meghan's jaw tightened. Her eyes flicked toward the cameras, then back to Savannah. For a second, she looked like she wanted to respond, but the words never came. She stood, adjusted her blazer, and gave a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. "Thank you, Savannah," she said and turned toward the exit. The audience and crew watched in silence as she walked off set. The camera stayed on Savannah, who exhaled quietly, her expression composed but thoughtful. The tension in the room felt alive, humming under the weight of what had just happened. The narrator's tone slowed, measured and reflective. In that silence, America saw something real. Not rehearsed, not royal, just raw. Two women, stripped of pretense, locked in a moment where truth refused to play by television rules. What happened on that set was more than just an interview. It was a rare moment of real journalism, where polished answers met unflinching questions. Savannah Guthrie did not shout or sensationalize. She simply refused to let performance replace truth. And that, in today's media world, is something almost unheard of. The moment exposed deeper themes that go beyond celebrity headlines. It was about accountability, the balance between pain and profit, and what happens when the image we build starts to crack under real pressure. It reminded viewers that authenticity is not about how well you present your story, but how much truth you are willing to stand in when the cameras stop being kind. For Meghan, it was a test of control. For Savannah, it was a stand for integrity. And for everyone watching, it became a mirror of our own fascination with fame, vulnerability, and power. So now the question is yours. Was Savannah too harsh, or was it about time someone asked the questions that no one else dared to ask? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay with us as we continue uncovering the truth behind the interviews that shake the internet. Because this story, like many others, is far from over.